There's a particular quality to the silence before dawn, a stillness that feels both ancient and impossibly new. Margaret knows this silence intimately. At 68, she's been waking at odd hours for the past 3 years, her body's internal clocks seeming to fracture like ice on a winter pond. Some nights, sleep arrives at 9 and releases her at 2 in the morning. Other nights, she lies awake until 3, only to be jolted conscious again at 5:30, exhausted and disoriented. She remembers when sleep was simple, when her body knew, with certainty, the rhythm of rest and waking, when she could fall asleep beside her husband and wake 8 hours later, refreshed, ready. But somewhere in her 60s, that gift began to slip away, replaced by this fragmented thing, half sleep, half waking, never quite either. This morning, like so many others, Margaret finds herself awake at 4:47 a.m. The room is still dark, the world outside her window a deep blue-black. She lies there for a moment, feeling the familiar frustration rise in her chest. Her daughter will visit today with the grandchildren, and Margaret knows what awaits her, the afternoon fatigue that will pull at her eyelids just as the children want to play, the mental fog that will make conversation feel like wading through deep water, the subtle but persistent exhaustion that colors everything gray. She thinks about the sleep medication her doctor suggested, the melatonin supplements her friend swears by, the chamomile tea she's been drinking religiously before bed. None of it seems to touch this deeper disarray, this sense that her body has forgotten its own ancient instructions. But this morning, something different happens. Instead of lying in bed, wrestling with sleeplessness, Margaret rises. She wraps herself in her soft robe, the blue one her granddaughter says makes her look like a queen, and makes her way downstairs. The house is cool and quiet. She moves through it like a ghost, careful not to wake her husband, whose breathing she can still hear, steady and deep from their bedroom. She opens the back door and steps onto the porch. The air is crisp, almost sharp against her skin. And there, just beginning at the eastern edge of the world, is something she hasn't truly noticed in years. The first suggestion of dawn. Not sunrise yet, but that preliminary glow, that promise of light. Margaret sits in her porch chair, the wooden one that's molded to her body after 30 years of morning coffee. She wraps her hands around the warm mug she's brought with her and watches. The sky begins its transformation, from deep blue to violet, from violet to rose, from rose to gold. It's not dramatic. It's not the spectacular sunset that everyone photographs. It's subtler than that, gentler. But as she sits there, something shifts in her chest, a loosening, a sense of rightness she hasn't felt in months. She doesn't know it yet, but this simple act, this 15 minutes of watching light emerge from darkness, is the beginning of something profound. Her body, without her conscious awareness, is responding to the wavelengths of blue light washing over her eyes. Her suprachiasmatic nucleus, the tiny cluster of neurons in her brain that serves as her body's master clock, is receiving the signal it's been desperately craving, a signal that says, "This is morning. This is the beginning of day. This is when you should be alert." For 3 years, Margaret's circadian rhythm has been drifting, untethered like a boat that's slipped its mooring. Her melatonin, that crucial hormone that tells her body when to sleep, has been releasing at erratic times, sometimes too early, sometimes too late, never quite synchronized with the actual cycle of day and night. Her cortisol, which should peak in the early morning to wake her gently and taper through the day, has been following its own confused pattern. But light, natural, full-spectrum morning light, is the reset button her body has been searching for. Inside every human being, there exists a timekeeper more precise than any mechanical clock. It's called the circadian rhythm, from the Latin circadium, meaning about a day, and it orchestrates nearly every biological process in your body across a roughly 24-hour cycle. Your sleep and wakefulness, your hunger and digestion, your body temperature and blood pressure, your immune function and cellular repair. even the way your body metabolizes medication and responds to infection. This rhythm isn't just a helpful suggestion, it's fundamental to human life, carved into our biology over millions of years of evolution, refined by the daily rotation of the Earth and the predictable cycle of light and darkness. But here's what most people don't understand. Your circadian rhythm isn't actually exactly 24 hours. For most people, it runs slightly longer, about 24.2 hours. This means that without external cues, your body would naturally drift later and later each day, going to bed 15 minutes later, waking 15 minutes later, until eventually you'd be completely out of sync with the actual world. What keeps this from happening? What keeps you anchored to the Earth's 24-hour day? Light, specifically the bright, blue-rich light of morning. When light enters your eyes, it travels along the optic nerve to that tiny cluster of neurons called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN, located in your hypothalamus just above where your optic nerves cross. This is your master clock, and it's exquisitely sensitive to light. When morning light hits your SCN, it triggers a cascade of signals that ripple through your entire body. First, it suppresses melatonin production. Melatonin, that hormone everyone takes as a supplement, is your body's darkness signal. It rises in the evening, making you drowsy, and should taper off through the night, reaching its lowest point in the morning. When you expose your eyes to bright morning light, you're telling your SCN, it's day, stop the melatonin, time to be awake. Simultaneously, morning light triggers the release of cortisol, serotonin, and other alertness hormones. Cortisol gets a bad reputation as a stress hormone, but in truth, it's essential for waking you up naturally. A healthy cortisol pattern shows a sharp rise in the first 30 minutes after waking, called the cortisol awakening response, followed by a gradual decline through the day. This pattern gives you energy when you need it and allows you to wind down naturally in the evening. But as we age, this beautiful system begins to falter. The lenses of our eyes yellow, filtering out more of the blue wavelength that our SCN depends on. We tend to spend more time indoors, away from natural light. We wake later, exercise less, have fewer social commitments that pull us into morning routines. Our sleep becomes fragmented. We wake repeatedly through the night, struggle to fall asleep, or wake too early and can't return to rest. Research from Northwestern University found that adults over 60 receive on average less than 1/3 the bright light exposure of younger adults. 1/3. Meanwhile, studies show that the strength of circadian rhythms naturally weakens with age. The amplitude of the rhythm flattens, meaning the difference between your daytime alertness and nighttime sleepiness becomes less pronounced. This creates a vicious cycle. Weak circadian rhythms lead to poor sleep. Poor sleep leads to less daytime activity and light exposure. Less light exposure further weakens circadian rhythms, and round it goes, with sleep quality deteriorating, energy declining, mood suffering. But here's the extraordinary thing. It can be reversed, not with medication, not with supplements, but with something as simple and ancient as morning light. Studies conducted at institutions from Harvard to the University of California have shown that regular exposure to bright morning light can strengthen circadian rhythms, improve sleep quality, decrease the time it takes to fall asleep, decrease nighttime awakenings, and increase daytime alertness in older adults. We're not talking about marginal improvements, we're talking about transformative changes. In one study, nursing home residents who received bright light therapy every morning for 4 weeks showed dramatic improvements in sleep quality, increased nighttime sleep duration on average by 45 minutes, and reduced nighttime restlessness by 60%. Their caregivers reported that they seemed more alert during the day, more engaged in activities, more like themselves. The mechanism is beautiful in its simplicity. Light is information. It tells your body where you are in the day-night cycle, and when you give your body clear, consistent information, bright light in the morning, darkness in the evening, it responds by organizing itself around that rhythm.
Hormones begin releasing at the right times, body temperature follows its proper curve, digestive enzymes prepare for meals at predictable hours. Your entire physiology begins to hum with renewed coherence.
3 weeks after that first morning on the porch, Margaret has established a ritual. Her alarm is set for 30 minutes before sunrise, not to force herself awake if she's sleeping, but as a gentle invitation if she's already lying there, restless and frustrated. Most mornings, she finds she's already awake, but now there's purpose in it, anticipation rather than dread. She rises quietly, makes her coffee or tea, sometimes chamomile, sometimes green tea. The ritual matters more than the contents, and steps outside. If the weather is cooperative, she sits on the porch. If it's raining, she positions herself by the large kitchen window that faces east. If it's bitterly cold, she bundles in her warmest coat and sits anyway, at least for 10 minutes, before retreating to the window for the rest. The key, she's learned, is consistency and timing. Not mid-morning light, filtered through curtains while she's making breakfast, not the artificial brightness of her kitchen LEDs, but actual morning light, as early as possible, preferably within the first hour after waking. She doesn't stare at the sun, she's not foolish. She simply faces east, lets the growing light wash over her face, and allows herself to be present. Some mornings she brings a book, though she rarely reads it. Some mornings she writes in a journal. Some mornings she simply sits, watching the world wake up. On the 4th morning of her new practice, she notices the cardinal that visits the feeder in her yard. By the 2nd week, she's identified 6 different bird species she'd never noticed before. She sees the way frost forms on the grass in intricate patterns. She watches clouds catch fire with color. She notices how the quality of light changes through the seasons, sharper in autumn, gentler in spring, the color temperature shifting in ways she'd never paid attention to. But more importantly, she notices changes in herself, subtle at first, then unmistakable. By the end of the 1st week, she realizes she's been falling asleep more easily, not every night, but more often than not. By the 2nd week, she's waking fewer times during the night. When she does wake, she drifts back to sleep instead of lying there for hours, mind racing. By the 3rd week, something even more remarkable happens. She wakes naturally, consistently, around 6:15 a.m., not with an alarm, but with her body's own gentle signal. And for the first time in years, she wakes feeling rested. Not every morning, but often enough that she recognizes the sensation. This is what refreshed feels like. This is what her body has been trying to return to. Her energy during the day stabilizes. That crushing afternoon fatigue that used to descend like a fog around 2 p.m. becomes less severe, less frequent. She finds herself more alert during her grandchildren's visits, able to play with them, fully present, instead of fighting to keep her eyes open. Her husband notices. "You seem different," he says one morning over breakfast. "More here." She knows what he means. For months, maybe years, she's felt slightly removed from her own life, observing it from behind a veil of exhaustion. Now that veil is thinning. Colors seem brighter, conversations more engaging. She feels more like herself, not her younger self, but a more vital version of her current self. What Margaret is experiencing isn't magic. It's biology being given what it needs. Her SCN, receiving consistent morning light signals, has begun to stabilize her circadian rhythm. Her melatonin now rises predictably in the evening, around 9 p.m., making her naturally drowsy. It peaks around 2 a.m. and begins to decline, reaching low levels by the time she wakes. Her cortisol follows its healthy pattern, surging gently in the morning to wake her, then tapering through the day. This is the foundation that everything else depends on. Sleep isn't just about feeling rested. When your sleep is consolidated and deep, your body can perform its nightly maintenance. Growth hormone is released, repairing tissues and maintaining muscle mass. Your immune system produces cytokines that fight infection and inflammation.
your brain clears out metabolic waste products, including beta-amyloid proteins associated with cognitive decline. Your memories consolidate, transferring from short-term to long-term storage. Poor sleep accelerates aging. Quality sleep slows it. And the foundation of quality sleep is a strong circadian rhythm. And the foundation of a strong circadian rhythm is light, the right light, at the right time. But Margaret's morning light ritual does something beyond the biological. It gives her something to look forward to. In a phase of life where so many rituals have fallen away, the morning commute to work, the packed lunches for children, the busy calendar of obligations, this new ritual creates structure and meaning. It's hers. It requires nothing from anyone else. It costs nothing. It demands only her presence and attention. And in that presence, in those quiet minutes watching light emerge from darkness, she finds something unexpected: peace. Not the absence of problems, but a groundedness that allows her to meet problems from a place of strength. The stress of her husband's upcoming medical procedure doesn't vanish, but it feels more manageable. The worry about her daughter's divorce doesn't disappear, but it doesn't consume her thoughts the way it did when she lay awake at 3 a.m., exhausted and anxious. Morning light, she's discovering, isn't just resetting her circadian rhythm, it's recalibrating her relationship with time itself, with the natural rhythms that human beings have followed since we first evolved under open skies.
Sarah arrives at her mother's house on a Saturday morning in late October, her two children tumbling out of the car with the boundless energy of a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old. She's bracing herself, as she always does, for what she'll find. Her mother has been struggling for years. The sleep issues, the low energy, the general sense that Margaret is slowly withdrawing from life. Sarah has watched her mother age in ways that seem accelerated, not by years, but by exhaustion. But today, something is different. Her mother opens the door before Sarah can knock, and she's already dressed, her eyes clear and bright. "I thought we could take the kids to the park," Margaret says. "I made snacks." Sarah blinks. The park? Her mother, who for the past 2 years has preferred to have the children visit at home, where she can retreat to a room when the noise becomes too much, who usually seems to be fighting just to stay awake through their visits. "Are you feeling okay?" Sarah asks, pressing her hand to her mother's forehead in a gesture that's become automatic. Margaret laughs, a real laugh, not the tired chuckle Sarah has grown accustomed to. "I'm feeling better than I have in years, actually." At the park, Sarah watches her mother chase her grandson, not running exactly, but moving with an energy and fluidity Sarah hasn't seen in a long time. Margaret helps her granddaughter across the monkey bars, patient and present. She sits on a bench and actually plays a clapping game, her attention fully with the children instead of that glazed, exhausted look Sarah has learned to recognize. Later, as the children play in the fallen leaves, Sarah asks, "What changed?" Margaret describes her morning light practice. At first, Sarah is skeptical. Sitting outside watching the sunrise cured her sleep problems? It sounds too simple, almost silly. But she can't argue with what she's seeing. Her mother's transformation isn't subtle. It's not wishful thinking. Margaret is more energetic, more engaged, more alive than she's been in years. "The light," Margaret explains, "it's like my body remembered what it's supposed to do. I'm sleeping through the night now, most nights. I wake up feeling rested. I don't have that horrible afternoon crash anymore." This is the ripple effect that happens when circadian rhythms strengthen. It's not just sleep that improves. When sleep is consolidated and deep, when hormones are releasing in their proper patterns, when your body is synchronized with the natural 24-hour cycle, everything else begins to fall into place. Margaret's appetite has normalized. For years, she's had little interest in breakfast, forcing herself to eat a piece of toast out of obligation. But now, she wakes actually hungry, her body prepared for nutrition. Her digestion has improved, less bloating, less discomfort, more regularity. This makes sense. The gut has its own circadian clock, and when the master clock in the brain is strong, it helps coordinate the peripheral clocks throughout the body, including in the digestive system.
Her mood has lifted. This isn't surprising. Serotonin, that crucial neurotransmitter associated with well-being and mood regulation, is produced in greater quantities when your circadian rhythm is strong. Plus, when you're sleeping well, when you have energy during the day, when you feel more like yourself, of course your mood improves. The fog of chronic exhaustion that colored everything gray has begun to lift. Her balance has improved. She noticed this one morning when she stepped onto her porch and didn't need to grab the railing, moving with a confidence that had gradually eroded over the past few years. Better sleep means better muscle coordination, faster reaction times, more efficient motor control. It means reduced fall risk, one of the most serious concerns for aging adults. Her relationship with her husband has deepened. When you're chronically exhausted, everything feels like an effort, including connection. But now, Margaret finds herself having actual conversations with Richard again, laughing at his jokes, initiating affection. They've started taking evening walks together, another practice that supports circadian health by exposing them to the dimming light of dusk. Even her relationship with her own aging has shifted. For years, she'd been fighting a slow, losing battle, feeling her vitality drain away without understanding why. She had assumed this was just what aging looked like, a gradual dimming, a slow retreat from life. But now, she's beginning to understand that while aging is inevitable, some of what she'd attributed to aging was actually the result of disrupted circadian rhythms, poor sleep, and the cascade of problems that followed. She can't stop the passage of time. She can't reverse the years, but she can support her body's natural rhythms. She can give herself the gift of quality sleep, which in turn gives her the gift of quality waking hours. She can be present for her grandchildren, not just physically in the room, but actually there, engaged, making memories. This is what physicians and researchers are beginning to understand. Circadian health isn't a luxury. It's not a minor factor in overall wellness. It's foundational. When your circadian rhythms are strong, you sleep better, digest better, think more clearly, feel more stable emotionally, maintain better balance and coordination, have a stronger immune system, experience less inflammation, and preserve cognitive function more effectively. And the intervention isn't complicated. It doesn't require expensive equipment or medications with side effects. It requires what Margaret is doing: consistent exposure to bright light in the morning, preferably natural light, preferably outside, for 15 to 30 minutes within the first hour or two of waking. That's it. That's the foundation.
But Margaret's transformation isn't complete with just morning light. She's learned that the circadian system responds to contrast, the difference between bright days and dark nights. If bright morning light is the key that starts the engine, darkness is what allows it to rest and reset. This is where modern life poses a challenge. Our ancestors experienced dramatic differences between day and night. Daytime was governed by the sun, intensely bright compared to what most of us experience indoors. Nighttime was dark, profoundly dark, lit only by fire or moon. This strong contrast kept circadian rhythms robust. But today, we live in a world of artificial light. We wake in dimly lit bedrooms, spend our days in offices lit to perhaps 300 to 500 lux, a fraction of outdoor daylight, which can reach 100,000 lux on a bright day, and then spend our evenings in rooms illuminated by lamps, televisions, and screens. The contrast between our days and nights has compressed dramatically. This matters because of melatonin. Remember, melatonin is your darkness hormone. When light levels fall in the evening, your pineal gland should begin producing melatonin, signaling to your body that it's time to prepare for sleep. Melatonin doesn't just make you drowsy, it lowers your core body temperature, reduces cortisol, and triggers a cascade of changes that prepare your body for rest and repair. But blue light, the wavelength most abundant in screens and LED lighting, suppresses melatonin production. When you're scrolling through your phone at 10 p.m., or watching television, or working on your laptop, you're sending a signal to your brain that it's still daytime, that you should remain alert. Your melatonin release is delayed, your sleep is postponed, and even when you do fall asleep, the quality is often poorer. Margaret has learned to create darkness rituals as intentionally as she created her morning light ritual. 2 hours before bed, she dims the lights in her home. She's replaced the bright overhead lights in her bedroom and living room with softer, warmer lamps. She's discovered that she doesn't actually need her house to be brightly lit in the evening. In fact, the softer lighting feels more peaceful, more conducive to winding down. She's established boundaries with screens. No phone in the bedroom. It charges in the kitchen now. If she wants to read before bed, she uses a book with a small reading light, not her tablet's glowing screen. The television goes off at 8 p.m. At first, this felt restrictive, but she's found that she doesn't miss it. She and Richard have started playing cards in the evening instead, talking more, moving slower. She's even invested in blackout curtains for the bedroom, blocking the street light that used to cast a faint glow across their bed. The darkness is complete now, and she's discovered that she sleeps more deeply in this dark cocoon. The science supports all of this. Studies show that even small amounts of light exposure at night, from street lights, electronics, even the LED clock on the nightstand, can suppress melatonin and fragment sleep. Research from Northwestern University found that sleeping in a room with moderate light, similar to having the television on, led to increased insulin resistance and heart rate compared to sleeping in a dark room. Older adults are particularly vulnerable to light at night because their eyes' pupils don't constrict as efficiently in bright light, allowing more light to reach the retina. This means that the same lamp that might have a minor effect on a 30-year-old can significantly suppress melatonin in a 70-year-old. But just as older adults are more vulnerable to light disruption, they also benefit more dramatically from light optimization. When Margaret combines bright morning light with dark evenings, she's creating the strong contrast her circadian system needs. She's giving her body clear, unambiguous signals about when to be alert and when to rest. The effects compound over time. Better sleep leads to better daytime function. Better daytime function leads to more activity and light exposure during appropriate hours. More activity and light exposure lead to even stronger circadian rhythms. The virtuous cycle builds on itself, strengthening with each rotation. Margaret has also learned about temperature. Just as light and darkness signal time to the circadian system, so does temperature. Core body temperature naturally drops in the evening as you prepare for sleep and rises in the morning as you wake. She's learned to support this by keeping her bedroom cool, around 65 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit, which helps facilitate the temperature drop that promotes sleep. She takes a warm bath an hour before bed. When she steps out, her body temperature rapidly drops, mimicking the natural evening decline and making her drowsy. These practices might sound complicated, but Margaret finds them surprisingly simple once they become routine. Morning light, evening darkness, cool bedroom, consistent timing. These aren't burdens, they're gifts she gives her body, ways of working with her biology instead of against it. And her body responds with the only language it knows: better sleep, more energy, clearer thinking, steadier mood, stronger immunity, less inflammation. The body doesn't argue, it doesn't resist. When given what it needs, it heals itself.
On a Saturday morning in November, Margaret's 9-year-old grandson, Lucas, stays overnight. He's been having trouble sleeping lately, his mother mentions. Screens before bed, difficulty waking for school, mood swings that seem worse in the winter months. Sarah asks if Margaret might talk to him, knowing that sometimes grandchildren listen to grandparents in ways they won't listen to parents. The next morning, Margaret wakes Lucas gently at 6:30, before sunrise. "Come with me," she says. "I want to show you something." Lucas, groggy and confused, follows her downstairs and out to the porch. "Grammy, it's still dark," he protests. "Not for long," she says, wrapping a blanket around his shoulders and handing him a mug of warm apple cider. "Just wait." They sit together in the pre-dawn darkness, the boy gradually waking as the sky begins its transformation. Margaret doesn't lecture. She doesn't explain circadian rhythms or melatonin suppression. She simply shares the experience with him, pointing out the cardinal that arrives at the feeder, the way frost glitters on the grass as the first light touches it, the particular shade of pink the clouds turn just before the sun crests the horizon. "This is what I do every morning," she tells him. "It helps me sleep better at night. It makes me feel stronger during the day." Lucas is skeptical at first, but as they sit there, something shifts. The beauty of the sunrise captures him, the stillness, the sense of being present for something that happens every day, but that he's never actually witnessed. When the sun finally breaks the horizon, he gasps slightly, and Margaret feels her heart expand. "Can we do this again tomorrow?" he asks. This is intergenerational knowledge being passed down, but in reverse, the elder teaching the young about rhythms that their modern lives have obscured. Lucas doesn't need to understand the neuroscience, he just needs to experience it, to feel how it affects him. Over the course of his weekend visit, Margaret gently introduces other practices. They go outside to play in the afternoon, running around the yard, soaking up natural light. As evening approaches, she shows him how they dim the lights. "We're helping our bodies know it's almost time to sleep," she explains. She teaches him card games to play instead of staring at screens. She reads him stories by lamplight instead of letting him watch videos on his tablet. By Sunday evening, when Sarah comes to pick him up, Lucas is different, more settled, less wound up. He tells his mother about watching the sunrise, about the games with Grammy, about how the house gets cozy and dark at night. Sarah catches her mother's eye over Lucas's head and mouths, "Thank you." This is what Margaret has become, not just someone who has healed herself, but someone who can share that healing with others. She's learned that circadian health isn't selfish self-care, it's a foundation that allows her to show up more fully for the people she loves. When she's rested, when she has energy, when her mood is stable and her mind is clear, she has so much more to give. She thinks about her husband's upcoming surgery, a hip replacement scheduled for January. Before, when she was exhausted and depleted, the prospect filled her with dread. How would she care for him during his recovery when she could barely care for herself? But now, with her energy restored, she feels capable. She can be the partner he needs, the caregiver who is present and patient, because she's taking care of her own foundation first. This is what they don't tell you about caregiving. You cannot pour from an empty cup. The metaphor is common enough, but people rarely understand what filling the cup actually requires. It's not bubble baths and occasional treats, it's foundational care, sleep, nutrition, movement, light, connection. When these foundations are strong, when your circadian rhythms are synchronized, and your sleep is deep and restorative, you have capacity, you have reserves, you can meet challenges that would otherwise overwhelm you. Margaret has started noticing other people her age, the way they seem to be swimming through fog, fighting fatigue, struggling with sleep. She wants to share what she's learned, but she's also cautious. She knows how it sounds. Just watch the sunrise and all your problems will be solved. It's too simple. People dismiss simple solutions, looking for something more complicated, more expensive, more dramatic. But the truth is that sometimes the most powerful interventions are the simplest. Light is free, darkness is free, consistency costs nothing but commitment, and the payoff, quality sleep, sustained energy, mental clarity, emotional stability, physical vitality, is beyond measure. She's thought about writing down her experience, creating a simple guide she could share. Morning light within an hour of waking, preferably outside for at least 15 minutes. Natural light throughout the day when possible. Dimming lights 2 hours before bed. Darkness for sleep. Consistency and timing. Movement during the day. Connection with others. Purpose and meaning. These practices aren't revolutionary. They're not cutting-edge interventions that required years of research to discover. They're ancient wisdom, validated by modern science. They're what human bodies were designed for, what we evolved to thrive on. We've just forgotten, distracted by artificial lights and screens and the demands of modern life. But it's not too late to remember.
It's never too late. Margaret is 68, and she's experiencing a renaissance of vitality she didn't think was possible. Her friend Eleanor is 72 and has started joining her for morning porch time, reporting similar improvements. Her neighbor Tom is 65 and has implemented evening darkness practices, finding that his insomnia is finally responding to something after years of medications and frustration. The body wants to heal. It wants to function optimally. It's designed for resilience. You just have to give it the right signals, the right support, the right environment, and then step back and let biology do what it does best.
It's mid-December now, and Margaret stands in her kitchen watching morning light stream through the eastern window. Outside, frost covers everything in crystalline white. The world looks new, though it's ancient, the same pattern of light and dark, warmth and cold, life and rest cycling since before humans walked the earth. She's been practicing her morning light ritual for 3 months now, 93 days to be precise. Some mornings have been harder than others, bitter cold mornings when she had to bundle in layers, rainy mornings when she sat by the window instead of outside, mornings when she woke still tired and had to practice anyway, trusting the process even when the immediate benefit wasn't apparent. But the cumulative effect is undeniable. Her sleep is transformed. She now falls asleep within 15-20 minutes of lying down, sleeps through the night with perhaps one brief awakening to use the bathroom, and wakes naturally around 6 a.m. feeling genuinely refreshed. This isn't every single night. She's human, and there are still occasional difficult nights, but it's most nights. It's her new normal. Her energy throughout the day is steady and sustained. The afternoon crashes have virtually disappeared. She has capacity for activities she'd given up. She's returned to her book club after a 2-year hiatus, started volunteering at the library once a week, resumed baking bread on weekends, a practice she'd abandoned because it felt too effortful. Her relationship with aging has fundamentally shifted. She used to think of aging as a slow, inevitable decline, a dimming of all the lights until eventually they went out. But she's learning that while aging is inevitable, much of what she'd attributed to age was actually the result of disrupted circadian rhythms and poor sleep, and those things can be addressed. She's not pretending she's 30 again. Her knees still protest when she kneels in the garden, her hair is silver and thinning, her skin has earned every line and age spot. But she's vital within this 68-year-old body. She's present, she's engaged, she's living, not just existing. This morning, she's preparing for Christmas at her house, all her children and grandchildren coming together for the first time in years. Before, the prospect would have filled her with anxiety. How would she manage the cooking, the hosting, the noise and energy of 6 grandchildren? How would she avoid the inevitable afternoon crash right in the middle of the celebration? But now, she's genuinely excited. She has energy for this. She's been sleeping well, waking early to bake and prepare, feeling capable and strong. She knows that her morning light practice will continue even during the busy holiday, 15 minutes on the porch, watching the winter sunrise, anchoring her day before the beautiful chaos begins. Her daughter Sarah has started implementing similar practices with Lucas: morning light exposure, evening dimming, consistent sleep timing. She reports that his mood has improved, his grades are better, he's fighting her less about bedtime. It seems too simple to work, Sarah says, but it's working. This is Margaret's legacy now, not just genes passed down, but knowledge, not just biological inheritance, but wisdom about how to care for these miraculous bodies we inhabit. She's teaching her grandchildren about rhythms, about honoring the patterns built into our biology, about working with nature instead of against it. She thinks about her own grandmother, who lived to 94, sharp and engaged until the very end. Margaret remembers how her grandmother would wake with the sun, go to bed early, spent hours in her garden, ate simple food, moved constantly but never rushed. At the time, Margaret thought these were just the quaint habits of an old woman from a different era. Now she understands. Her grandmother knew. She'd lived in alignment with natural rhythms because she'd grown up without artificial light, without screens, without the disruptions of modern life. She'd carried those practices forward, and they'd served her well. Margaret is bridging 2 worlds, carrying forward ancient wisdom while living in a modern context.
She can't turn the clock back to a pre-electric era, and she wouldn't want to, but she can take what was beneficial from that era, the connection to natural light, the honoring of darkness, the simplicity of aligned rhythms, and integrate it into her contemporary life. This morning, as she stands in her kitchen bathed in winter light, Margaret makes herself a promise. She will not abandon this practice. It's no longer an experiment or a temporary intervention. It's who she is now, a person who rises with intention, who honors her body's needs, who works with her biology instead of against it. This is sustainable. This is life-giving. This is how she wants to live the years she has remaining, however many that might be. She wraps her hands around her warm mug and steps out onto the porch into the crisp December morning. The sky is that particular shade of pre-dawn blue that makes everything feel possible. In the distance, she hears a dog barking, a car starting, the world beginning to wake. But for this moment, it's just her and the gradually brightening sky, this daily miracle of light returning after darkness. And in that light, she understands something profound. Healing isn't always dramatic. It doesn't always announce itself with trumpets and transformation montages. Sometimes healing is quiet and gradual, built through small, consistent practices repeated day after day until they become who you are. Sometimes healing is as simple as facing east and watching the sunrise, as simple as honoring darkness, as simple as remembering that you are part of nature, not separate from it, and that your body knows ancient rhythms if you'll just give it the signals it needs. The sun breaks the horizon, and Margaret smiles. Another day begins. Another opportunity to practice, to be present, to be alive in this aging body that has carried her so faithfully through 68 years, and, with care and attention and these simple daily gifts of light, will carry her forward still. This is her ritual. This is her healing. This is her life, illuminated.
If Margaret's story resonates with you, if you recognize yourself in her struggle with sleep and fatigue, if you're ready to try something simple yet profound, here's how to begin. Week 1. Morning light. Start with just morning light. Set your alarm for 30 minutes before sunrise. You can find exact sunrise times for your location online. When you wake, make your coffee or tea and go outside. If weather permits, sit on your porch or in your yard. If it's raining or bitterly cold, position yourself by a window that faces east. The goal is 15 to 30 minutes of light exposure within the first hour of waking. You don't need to stare at the sun. Never look directly at the sun. Simply face generally eastward and let the light wash over your face. Read, journal, or simply sit. Be present. Do this every day, even weekends. Consistency matters more than perfection. If you sleep late one day, still get your morning light as soon as you wake, but try to maintain regular wake times as much as possible. Week 2. Evening dimming. Once morning light is established as a habit, add evening practices. 2 hours before your intended bedtime, begin dimming lights in your home. Turn off overhead lights and use lamps instead. If you must use screens, reduce brightness and consider blue light filtering glasses or apps. Stop eating at least 2 hours before bed. Keep your bedroom cool, dark, and quiet. Consider blackout curtains if street lights or outdoor lights penetrate your room. Week 3. Consistency in timing. Try to wake and sleep at roughly the same time each day, even on weekends. Your circadian rhythm thrives on consistency. If you naturally wake early, embrace it. Use those quiet morning hours for your light practice rather than fighting to return to sleep. Week 4. Movement and connection. Add daytime outdoor activity. A 20-minute walk in natural light, gardening, playing with grandchildren outside. Any activity that combines movement with natural light exposure will strengthen your circadian rhythms further. Connect with others during daylight hours. Social interaction, especially outdoors, provides multiple benefits: light exposure, emotional connection, and purpose. The long view. Give this practice at least 30 days before judging its effectiveness. Some people notice improvements within a week. Others need several weeks for their circadian rhythms to strengthen and stabilize. Track your sleep in a simple journal. When you go to bed, when you wake, how you feel. Look for patterns over time rather than focusing on individual nights.
Remember, this isn't about perfection. You won't do it perfectly every day. Weather will interfere, life will interfere. That's okay. What matters is consistency over time, not flawless execution every single day. This practice won't solve every health challenge you face. It's not a cure-all, but it provides a foundation, quality sleep, sustained energy, mental clarity that makes everything else more manageable. It's the ground from which all other healing can grow. Your body knows what to do. It's been following circadian rhythms for millions of years of evolution. You just need to give it the signals: light in the morning, darkness at night, and consistency in timing. The rest will follow. Start tomorrow morning. Set your alarm, make your coffee, step outside. Watch the light emerge from darkness. Notice how you feel, not just that day, but over weeks and months. Notice the subtle shifts, the gradual strengthening, the slow but undeniable transformation. Your healing begins with light, and light begins with a single sunrise, witnessed with intention and presence. The sun will rise tomorrow whether you watch it or not, but if you choose to be there, to receive that light, to let it recalibrate your rhythms and restore your vitality, that choice changes everything. Margaret made that choice. So can you.